we're back with the Lipscomb Pitts Breakfast Club radio show, powered by Teamwork. Here with one of I think he's one of my mentors. He's a Breakfast Club partner, CEO of masterIT. He's been one of the founding partners of the Breakfast Club. One of my just personal friends. But Michael Drake, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Jeremy.
Describe, I could go on my version of what you guys do, but you guys help Lipscomb Pitts Insurance, big part, as I said, of the Breakfast Club, managed IT service provider. But describe in your own words what masterIT does and kind of the work that you're doing for companies across the Mid-South.
Sure. Well, masterIT is what we call a pure play managed service provider, which is a fancy way of saying we're really a company's IT department. The outcome that we deliver is the fact that our clients are just up and running. They can focus on their core and their clients and not worry whether IT is working or not. We really serve the 10 to 250 person company in the Mid-South. Our solutions are fixed fee. That way the client knows what they're spending every month, and they don't have to worry about the meter being running if there's a problem. So again, they can just focus on what they do and leave the business of IT to us.
I like how you explained it before. It's kind of like the chocolate cupcake, and so I'll let you kind of describe that, but describe the chocolate cupcake philosophy.
Well, thanks for remembering. We talk about that a lot because we use analogy-type terms because it's hard for people really to think about IT. They just want it to work. So really the outcome that we deliver is really like the chocolate cupcake. And if you really talk about the ingredients that go in the cupcake, so whether it be the water, the sugar, the flour, the eggs, those ingredients by themselves are not so exciting. Just like email management and data security and backup, in running the network, those by themselves aren't really exciting either. But when the cake is baked really well, and locally we use the example of Muddy's, and if you ever had a Muddy's Prozac chocolate cupcake, you know exactly what we're talking about. All the difference in the world is the outcome and not the ingredients. So we really try to simplify what our offer is to the client. It's basically everything that they need to be to take IT from being firefighting to fire prevention. And if you really think about it, whether it's Lipscomb Pitts or it's masterIT or it's Habitat for Humanity, every business needs three things out of IT. Number one, they need plumbing, like Habitat needs plumbing, which is the infrastructure. So that's the equipment. Every business also needs support for that infrastructure and support for the people. Because if you keep the infrastructure up and running but the people can't utilize it or can't leverage it, it's no good. And then the final thing that people need, and what we've really been focused on the last few years, is people need consulting. They need to understand where technology is going, not for technology's sake, but what does that mean to their business and how can they leverage it to be more successful.
And it just dawned on me when you were talking about the chocolate cupcake analogy, it's not just the ingredients that go into it. It's actually the chef that prepares it. That has just as much bearing on the outcome as the ingredients going in.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because, you know, in our first meetings with many prospects, we say that our services aren't for everybody. And in fact, they're not for most people. They're for people who really value technology and leverage technology to be either intimate with their clients or to produce revenue, which gets everybody's attention. But, you know, in many of those discussions, we have people that want to bring their own eggs to make the cupcake, or they want our ingredients and they want to make it themselves. And we can't put our name on that kind of cake. And, you know, it's just like going to the doctor and telling the doctor how to treat you. Either we have a good fit philosophically and culturally, or we don't. And that's okay because there are plenty of providers that can provide a different kind of cake. We've just been very focused since we started the business on really improving that methodology a little bit at a time. And we learned that, you know, innovation comes through process and improving the process, not just through the technology.
Absolutely. And I like, let's kind of carry that conversation on the consulting role and being forward-looking. Talk about some of, you call it the 5 big IT trends that every business owner needs to know, but talk about some of the trends that you're seeing out there. What has your focus, I should say?
Yeah, we are experiencing a revolution in technology like we haven't seen in many generations. You know, with the advent of cloud and all the hype around that in the last few years, the computer has finally escaped the box. You know, it's escaped the PC that sat on people's desks and it became the laptop. The laptop has now become the smartphone and the tablet. And the interesting thing about that, and that's really the first and we think probably the most important discussion to have with clients today in the big 5 things of IT, is the whole notion of the next generation of mobility, which is smartphones and tablets. And the pillars around that are the mobile devices themselves. You see how much they've proliferated. The second thing is now the fact that we can get all these applications really through the cloud. And then the final pillar behind that is these very fast broadband connections that we have, with the internet being ubiquitous. So we kind of have a new term, which is BYOD, which is bring your own device. Because what we've seen happening, in fact, we've been consulting with clients leading up to Christmas, is that no doubt so many people, thousands of people, received iPads or smartphones under the Christmas tree. Well, what they want to do now is they want to bring them to the office and they want to connect. Well, that's great because those are productivity tools, but it brings about a whole new discussion within the client base regarding provisioning, regarding security, regarding mobility in and of itself, regarding approved applications, regarding, as I said, security, the potential of introducing malware into the environment that the business doesn't want to support. So it's a big, big issue, and it's going to be a bigger discussion as we move ahead. So that's really the first piece. And I would say following behind that, the second big thing is what we call the consumerization of IT. And that really follows on to the whole iPad, Kindle Fire, smart tablet, discussion. And that is that the fact that we can buy an iPad now and we can connect to any application that we want just through point and click. When we come into the office environment, we as workers feel like, well, we should be able to get that out of our enterprise IT.
Right.
Unfortunately, enterprise IT is not built to deliver those applications in that way. It's changing over time, but what's happening is people become innovative. If they can't get what they want, they try to find a different way. And in the advent of Google, we can all just about Google anything. But again, workarounds create problems sometimes. So again, from our consultative approach, we're really trying to school our clients into at least the questions to ask. So those are really the first two big things. And I would say that the third thing would be the whole advent of social media 2.0. There was such a huge hype around social media over the last few years, and many CEOs tried to figure out how to monetize it and couldn't, so they gave up on it. But I would speak to you and say, how have you used social media, and how are you using social media today to connect with your community of the Lipscomb Pitts Breakfast Club and all of the things that you do?
Well, and the funny thing is, we just literally came from a meeting where we were talking about the new website and designing that, and even for Lipscomb Pitts Insurance, and really weaving it all together. Even on the technology front, on the tablets, it's amazing now how our whole office, especially our producers, are trying to move more toward the tablets to be able to take out for presentations. So completely getting away from the paper presentations, more toward an interactive type format that they can bring out and showcase. But then also, too, it brings about, because when you talk to our IT world, they're worried about, okay, we've got to be able to wipe that clean if the tablet gets stolen. We've got to be able to wipe all the information remotely. There's all sorts of security mechanisms then and decisions that have to follow right in line. So it's really interesting how one thought process then breeds a whole nother set of circumstances to consider. And then on the social media side, you're right, because we have one hire and then is going to graduate in May, and so we're going to have two more in our communications department. Very sharp young ladies stepping in, and they live in a world of social media where Facebook, Twitter, all those, that's like their right hand. And so literally at the Samaritan's Feet event last Friday, I'm sitting there running around trying to get all these things done. Well, our Nicole is doing the same thing, but while she's doing that, she's over here tweeting and this and that, taking pictures, and I'm thinking, she's doing all this simultaneously, but that's just how they are now in terms of that's an interactive mechanism. And so for us, it's really interesting now to be able to tap into that and say, okay, let's leverage that from a business resource. But you're right. For us, it's more about communicating. It's more about having a dialogue with people and saying, okay, what can we do together to improve our city? What can we do for events? What can we do to spotlight nonprofits? It's an engagement mechanism. And I think that's what's going to be interesting now for Lipscomb Pitts Insurance is we're starting to shape that community outlook for social media versus anything else, but it's going to be more of a community driver to celebrate the positives going on here, to celebrate our clients and our team, to celebrate our employees, but use it as a mechanism, as a mouthpiece really, to have a conversation with the community.
Right, and it's interesting the way you characterize it, because it is becoming a much more efficient form of communication than email. And for the first time in history, now Facebook posting has actually surpassed the volume of email. And, Facebook is not necessarily regulated by spam filtering. So, there's really a greater flow of information. And if you even look at website design today, we work with a lot of clients who are really trying to, again, from a branding standpoint, tell their story in a different way than they have. And to do that, and particularly to reach the demographic, if you notice, many more websites today take the look and feel of a Facebook type page,
Right.
that type of a navigation. And so, our encouragement to businesses is meet your constituency where they are. And you're a prime example. You and I talk about it all the time, of how if you can make it very easy for your constituency to plug and play, then you're going to be more successful. You're going to have a better dialogue, and the relationship is going to be more sticky. So, that's the third piece. And then the fourth piece is something that very similar to social media has received a lot of hype, being cloud technologies, but they have matured enough to where on our list of 5, it's actually the least controversial, because they have developed in terms of the public cloud, where you see people like Amazon and Rackspace. You see the private cloud, where you have people like masterIT who provide private cloud environments for their clients. And then you have the hybrid, the mix of the two. And I'm a big believer that for the foreseeable future, that hybrid will really be the business model for most people, because there's certain applications that don't play well in the cloud. There's a misnomer, because we've seen so much information in the media, that cloud technology is cheap uptime. It's not true. Cloud technology is just a different deliverable. Rather than on-premise with a lot of servers, it's applications that reside anywhere, anytime, which again, with these people who now have these very intimate objects that they hold in their hands, they want to access that data anywhere, anytime. The challenge is, as I said before, from the consumerization of IT, is that part hasn't matured enough to where many of those applications even today play well in the cloud. We see this in the healthcare environment where we support our clients. We see it in the commercial insurance environment,
absolutely.
quite frankly, just to name your vertical to be one. Accounting is starting to get there. Legal is a bit of a laggard, depending on who the providers are. So, again, it's our job to be having this conversation with the client, certainly before they ask us. And then the final one of the big 5 is what we refer to as big data, which is a new term that maybe many people who would be listening might not be familiar with. And Gartner, which is the world's foremost independent research firm for technology, estimates that in the next 3 years, data proliferation, the data that we create, will increase by 800%.
Wow.
And that data's got to go somewhere. And we as business leaders really have to try to understand how can we assimilate that data, because now it's coming from so many different places. It used to come from that mainframe in the server room. Then it came from the network. Now it comes from the cloud and many other places. And what people are trying to accomplish is to do more with the same, and to assimilate so many different data points to where they can have maybe a single pane of glass to get the right metrics that they need to make the decision as quick as they need to make it to act. In other words, to be more competitive and more successful. And that requires a different kind of programming. It requires a different type of architecture. It requires a different type of methodology and how to manage it, to mine it. So, that's going to be a big, big topic going forward. So those are 5 things that you and I wouldn't have had a conversation about in this way even a year or 2 ago. And these things are coming together almost like a perfect storm to create a real demand and, quite frankly, a real confusion. So what we encourage people, whether you have your own internal IT department, a managed service provider like masterIT, or you use both, if you're not having that conversation about those 5 things and what it means to the business, not necessarily today, but maybe next month or next year, it needs to be happening, because I can assure you your competitors are. And it's all about now speed and velocity, versus just information.
Well, and everything you talked about is proactive versus reactive and looking ahead. And I think that's one of the hardest things is not just like you said, managing for today, but managing and looking forward to tomorrow in terms of what do I expect, what do I need to start building now so that I'm ready in a year, 2 years, or 3 years.
And it's true, and it will become more complicated because there will be more choices. So we feel strongly enough about the topic that we're going to be publishing a white paper on all 5 of those topics, a very simple business leader-oriented white paper, and then we're going to be following that white paper up with monthly lunch and learns. And we're going to be bringing with masterIT different subject matter experts in each of those 5 that we discussed, just to educate, just to give people something to think about so that they can be proactive. And we certainly look forward to the discussion and any follow-up that we might be able to help people with.
Before we wrap it up, I'm just curious from one more question, because you yourself, you're heavily engaged in the community. Big part of the University of Memphis and their MILE program and LEAD program and the mentorships. I mean, you're such a big influencer when it comes to mentorships across the Mid-South. Talk about, see a number of articles, but now we're living in the impact economy, that it's about making an impact, it's about relationships, it's about doing more than just being a business and operating a business. You saw it in USA Today where people are looking for companies to be a part of the solution of America, and it's not good enough just to go out and necessarily write a check. They want to see you making a positive difference. And you yourself and your company are doing that, but I'm curious from your perspective, in general, what is your take on that? I mean, is that something that you see as a big trend? I mean, what is your take on that we're living in an impact economy?
Well, I think given, generationally where we are, and if you look at what's happened in the economy in the last few years, people understand, because so much has changed, that life is a lot more than money. And it's really about your experience and where you are. And, that's the beauty of the MILE program, is that it seeks first to give back to students in basically helping them understand the way business works, the way relationships work, what to experience, what to expect. And oh, by the way, we're not perfect and we don't have all the answers, that you will make mistakes. The important thing is to fail forward. I wish I would have had that when I was in college. It would have helped me quite a bit more. The selfish aspect of that, and I mean that in a benevolent way, is we're trying to connect with the best and the brightest in our community. And I see this happening in other communities to make it better, to where people don't export the talent, that we retain it and that we build upon it. Because, kind of like what we talk about in technology, that if you can innovate by getting a little bit better every day, and by really having a consistency of community and improving that a little bit better every day, we're going to become a much better society. And I see it in my own company. People want more than a paycheck. They want to be able to give as well as to receive, and then they have a much happier existence. Nice.
Well, last question as we wrap up, how do people get in touch and find out more information about masterIT?
Thank you. You can find us on the web. All of our social media is there, but just go to master-it.com, and hopefully you'll be able to intuitively navigate and find what you look for.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for being on the show.
Jeremy, always a pleasure to be with you.